Actually, my original suggestion when I was, I hope this is okay.
Yeah, it's on.
When I was contacted about doing a panel here was financially totally unfeasible because given what I perceived to be the nature of dramaturgical practice in the Forsyth Company, I would have liked to have invited the entire ensemble and taken a good 6 hours to try to hash it all out, but I had to settle for Bill and one dancer.
I represent 18.
Exactly. Just a little history. I started working with Bill in 2006 when I came over to do my dissertation research and was completely flabbergasted when he offered me the job of dramaturg because first of all, I didn't consider myself a dramaturg. I considered myself a dance scholar. But,
and she had no idea what I meant by dramaturg.
And that's exactly the point, yeah.
It's not the standard version of the word, yeah.
Yeah, I think that...
Yeah, the standard one is like the person who makes sure that Hamlet is dead at the end of the play.
Yeah, right.
Like that the director remembers to kill off Hamlet or something, you know, like...
Yeah. But I remember when you told me this, when I told you this, you said, "Don't worry. You and I know that having someone that's called the dramaturg is just another way to get an extra smart person in the room."
Right.
So I thought, oh, okay, is it just a question of the more the merrier? But the other thing that gave me pause was when I showed up after having received this appointment that one of the boys in the company, who shall go unnamed, it's not you, sort of looked me up and down and said, "So, you're the new dramaturg, huh?" Oh. What am I getting myself into? And almost immediately I was asked to produce some sort of written commentary about the practice of the company, and I didn't feel comfortable.
Who asked you to do that?
Patrick Primavesi for the European Dramaturgy in the 21st Century Conference in 2007.
That was a bit premature, wasn't it?
Yeah. So I didn't get around to getting anything concretely down until about 2010, 2011, and it was the hardest thing I ever put together because I felt as I was writing my way into the process that I was basically pulling the chair out from under my own ass and making a case that I was essentially redundant because what I had discovered the dramaturgy to be was emergent because the company works with devising practice, distributed in an extremely radical sense, that there's a lot of dramaturgy that gets made by the dancers that is not pooled into a communication that is shared with everyone else, and I think the same is true for you as well.
Right.
This really gave me pause about my own, the necessity for myself as dramaturg.
Freya's really funny. She has a great sense of humor. And that's really important. Yeah, yeah, no, and yeah. I mean, really, because I once, in the not so distant past, said to myself, I actually have a group of comedians who can dance. Yeah, and I mean that actually in a serious way. When's the last time you saw a group of comedians who can dance? And, well, he came to our show, right? And in a certain way, we've moved into kind of a weird form of comedy, what is it? Musical comedy? Yeah. Theater, dance, something? I mean, we can't define what we do. But we end up, and this is not to take all the air out of the big seriousness. I would say that normally we laugh about 80% of the time, or 85% of the time, just because of the diversity of input in the room, and how do you say, the really oblique, you know what I mean, oblique, really odd view of what's being discussed by all the various members of the company. In other words, my version of what it is maybe not so interesting, yeah? But collectively, I would say, then it begins to get interesting. Also, it's more interesting for me because it's not my idea. Do you know what I mean? Your own ideas are only, there's always a certain kind of telos is implicated, like, am I going to try to make my idea come true? You choreographers, you know that, right? So, and what's maybe the interesting moment is when your idea is completely mashed up and put out in an entirely different way by the people involved.
Yeah, sure. I mean, we have the problem, of course, being in a situation of he's the boss. So I have to figure out how to do what he says, even though I know he doesn't really want me to do what he says. And so how do I do that? It still has to kind of
How do you do that?
It has to be able to remind him of what he said, but it has to be
as I said, oblique. It's not
totally
opposed,
oblique, yeah.
but it's not moving parallel.
Yeah.
But it has, let's say, the vectors are the same.
And that's funny. That's where the comedy comes from. I think it's the unusual connection. I think I'm not going to quote a famous filmmaker, but Jean-Luc Godard's something that the connection has to be distant but right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So how do you make it as distant as possible and still be right? Whatever right. Juste is the French word. It's like correct, fitting. That's a great challenge.
In the last show we just did, for some reason, Dave and another colleague ended up writing square dance lyrics live on stage for an hour and a half.
Really nasty square dance lyrics.
Not only nasty, but odd. Rude, but and how that came about was, again, a series of serendipitous, so almost accidental circumstances that kept piling up. And then suddenly, the show we had made in the dress rehearsal, I realized that was not the show we probably should be showing. So the next morning, we completely threw out that show and in 2 hours made an entirely different show that had the only thing in common was the square dance lyrics now, which had become the central part of the show, and was a sort of combination square dance philosophical discussion on Schiller, Shakespeare, and Spiegel.
And this is actually where the work gets a little bit scary for me, because we'll go along in process and sort of be bouncing from one idea to the other, and then when we get into that end phase of the rehearsal and something as surprising happens as what happened that Saturday morning. I showed up for work, and our technical director was wheeling some mirrors onto the stage and putting some chairs out, and you were saying, "There's this quote about the stage holding up a mirror, can you find?" And I Googled and found Shakespeare, and I Googled and found Schiller. And I said, I guess this must be it, because at the very beginning of the process, we just happened to have been talking about Weimar classicism, and we had just done a piece based on Shakespeare text. And so just handed the texts to David and Tillman O'Donnell, and they just sort of began riffing, and all of a sudden, this show just came rolling out of nowhere. Not entirely new, but working with the materials that had been put together over 6 weeks selectively. And in 2 hours, there was a brand new show there.
Nothing got wasted. People often, I think, confuse visible work with work. And a lot of work gets done by the dancers in ways that are just invisible. You're not like they're going, and now I'm going to do this, It's something else is happening because everyone's trying to look at the process from their own perspective, and not everyone's running up and going, look what I did, It's just, that people have been in the room, so you can say to someone, you have the right reaction for this scene, and suddenly like Riley walks in and becomes the set decorator, whatever.
It seems to me that it's kind of a question of styles of thinking.
Go on.
That the company is hired based on having a range of different styles of thinking and reaction in the room, and that they fit into the structures that are made. Sometimes dancers will even insert themselves into an event if they feel called on to do so.
They will. Suddenly someone's in a scene you didn't know they were. So someone is in the middle of I would say one of our main goals is to think compositionally, and that means on all levels. So if everyone's working simultaneously on the composition, someone might walk in and think, or rather do something that they think is the right thing, even though it's not quote unquote choreographed. You know, it hadn't been discussed before, for example. And it can work or not work, but it's still, the process is going on stage. So most performances now of our company are, they don't have a fixed structure. I call them during the show. I have no idea how long they'll last. We have an idea what comes next in some cases, but some cases not. For example, a lot of things are that happen. For example, in unison. You know, if there's like everyone would stop or fall down or something. That's a very rough description. Then that might be communicated during the show. But often, for example, in the last show, David and Tillman are writing this philosophical square dance comedy talk show thing, and another person has come in and has assigned themselves the role of me. They play me as a set decorator, basically. And then all of us are on ear sets. I can hear what they're saying, they can hear what each other is saying, and then I'm also talking to them. So all this is being generated live. Or the returns, where the pirates come in and take over the show and put on a 45-minute fashion show. All the text of the people at the beginning are fed in, and I have no idea, actually, except that I'm going to say a few certain key words and all that. And then those people then take over that and elaborate on that. You took the pirate thing and you wrote a song?
Yeah, right from the beginning, yeah.
Well, you asked me to write a pirate song. Or you said like, I need a pirate song, and so I tried to do it. So.
And if anyone can write a pirate song, it's him. Let me tell you.
That was one of the rare instances since I've been working with the company that you walked in on the first day of rehearsal. You had just come back from the Venice Biennale, and you were talking about the art scene and how weird and how financially oriented it is. And that was one of the rare instances where you said, we're going to do this, that, and the other, and you actually did.
Yeah, but my secret goal, since we only had 9 days to make a full evening piece, I said, I'm going to make a piece in 9 days with no stress. And that's what came out. So, pirates, fashion show.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, we got to Hellerau, and there was this work table set up downstage that had a lot of crap from the technicians and some tapes, and two of the performers just sat down and started making themselves fingernails out of red tape.
Out of red tape.
Playing around, and Yoko started saying, oh, you want nails, you have money, and you were just like, go on.
She became a psychic manicurist, manicurist art collector, right. And Manchi became Frida Kahlo, the Mexican painter.
Meanwhile, I was back in my hotel room frantically reading Moby Dick as fast as I could until 2 days before the premiere, and you were like, no, Freya, it's Treasure Island. So I stayed up until 4 a.m. reading Treasure Island to get on the same page. This is how we work.
This is how we work, yeah. Yeah, people think we're like reading Rancière and we're sort of sitting there going, like that. No.
Yeah.
Apropos writing stuff, you do a lot of. You're not the only person, but you do a lot of independent writing on your own, a lot of independent text generation, and I have no part of that.
It just kind of hits me sometimes. You get mostly walking down the street, and a lyric comes or something, and you've got to write it down. I mean, the funnest one was this apology.
And yes, we can.
Actually, no, it came before.
Apology, yeah.
In Theatrical Arsenal.
It was Theatrical Arsenal, and for some reason I wasn't really connecting with what was happening in the actual dancing part of the studio, and so I started writing things, and one of them was this apology, which you remembered 6 months later. Do that apology now.
Keep on coming back.
I don't know. it had something to do with about going over past material. So I guess I was going over past material in my own way, in my head about ideas and things.
Yeah.
And I try to keep my hat on in moments like that when I listen to a text and make gentle diplomatic suggestions about additions or changes, and sometimes you actually listen to me.
Yeah. No, I want to have the best thing.
Freya's awesome. One of the new members of the company, he turned to me and he said, "How come Freya knows everything?" You have a pretty wide range of knowledge, Freya.
I just Google really.
You just Google a lot. Yeah, I know. She does Google a lot, which I'm really grateful for. She knows how to search, like any good academician. She knows how to really search well and fast, which is really important. You want the information. If you're going to let your ideas go like that, then someone's got to be able to go, oh, well, no, wait, yes, but, you know.
But
so.
when I get on a research jag, more often than not, I wind up having a sort of an oblique process myself, where you'll ask me to look up something, and I'll look that up, and you'll be busy, so I'll have time, and it'll lead me. I love the internet because you can just jump from one link to another, and it will seem like I'll go around 5 different corners until some text rings a bell, and I say, this is the one. I think this is the one. I'm going to go ahead and print this up, and it's only related to the original request by a chain of very tenuous associations.
YouTube is very important. With a lot of stuff, YouTube. We tried to copy Les Nos recently, and other stuff, Moiseyev in Yes We Can't, and it's become a great resource.
We had Frosty the Parrot doing his
the
thing.
parrot, for other issues, either not just for entertainment value, but also just information. There of different kinds, comparing things, looking at things people have done. Make sure you're not doing someone else's dance.
Dancers will bring in texts, dancers will bring in images, and sometimes it just comes out of chance occurrences because something happens to be in the space, like the ping pong table.
Right. Right. Ping pong became a part of outer space because people wouldn't stop playing ping pong. I was trying to rehearse, and people kept playing ping pong. So I decided to put it in the piece.
And then it was in return.
Oh, no, but I put it in the piece because someone had sent that Bunraku video. You know the Bunraku where they had the ping pong game, where they had the ball and the stick, and they move, the puppeteers move in black. You look it up, Bunraku, ping pong. You'll know what I'm talking about. And it was a really, has anyone seen that video? Yeah? Yeah, see, there you go. Talk to them. And that plus the ping pong table, so we ended up doing a Foley version, which means that they play ping pong, but the sound is artificially produced by one of the performers, like that. And they have a very complicated ping pong match that is only acoustic, actually.
And then it was also in returns as a soundtrack for one of the duets, all the balls.
Oh yeah, right.
The girls.
Ping pong came in again too.
Yeah, but as we go along through processes, the ideas just accumulate and accumulate and accumulate, and it's only very late in the process that things get selected and put into order. And
on stage usually.
And by that point in time, we're actually discussing things very, very little. Everything's just sort of getting made.
That's because I'm near death. I am in a state of mortal fear and can't talk because I realize that show actually has to go up tomorrow night or tonight, and I don't have a solution. So also what we'll do is we'll change, usually most of the time, we'll change a show for years. And according to who's dancing the show, who's new, I'll invent whole new sections for people who arrive and try to make sense out of their presence in the piece. So the piece is not more, in a certain sense, should not be more important than the performers, and that means the whole company. So that's an important issue. But then something like an older piece like Artifact, I worked on for like 25, 26 years, and Actually, I changed it last week. It was kind of interesting. And then, because the ladies gave me an idea, they did something. I was like, oh, do
The room
that.
wasn't
Yeah.
deep enough, so
Yeah,
they,
they
staggered the lines.
themselves, yeah. But a piece like that, which is neoclassical, 25, 30 years ago, I didn't have the skill to do what I would have liked to do as a handwerklich, so what do you call it, handwerklich?
Crafty.
Craft-wise, yeah. But as the longer I worked, the more skills I acquired, and then I would change it according to my own skill set, which had evolved, yeah. And then the same thing goes for the performers. Maybe 6 or 7 years later, you realize, oh, you need to readjust the work or something, you know what I mean? Or they also sometimes adjust the work to their changing skill set, you know, like Riley and Josh, those guys, things are dramatically shifted because they can access things better. Yeah.
So, in terms of dramaturgy,
What dramaturgy?
I always, the question for me became where? Where's the dramaturgy? Is it inside of heads? Is it floating around in the room, in the space between people? I found myself not necessarily trying to define it so much as locate it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that whole emergent thing sums it up. Like I think it's all of our jobs as an individual performer to kind of not be aware of what's going on. Like as a real agent, as an independent agent, and not to think dramaturgically, but think that I have to do what I'm supposed to do, and that is going to work because of the context. And you're setting the context in a piece. So a certain level of the dramaturgy rests solely on him, as far as I can tell. But it's my job to act confidently, assuredly, whatever. And
my job is to be verzweifelt the whole time. Yeah, right. Yeah.
Well, I think I can be verzweifelt backstage, but I think on stage I can't be I don't have any ability to be verzweifelt.
Or that's the subject.
Yeah, that's the subject. Yeah.
Yeah, like with you and Tillman, in a certain sense.
Yeah.
What else? What else? Now that we've told you everything, no one's going to buy tickets anymore.
Well, one of the other parts of my job as so-called dramaturg, that's what I call myself, is talking to audiences. And when we get through a new production phase, I've already warned our marketing staff, do not schedule me for any pre or post-performance talks until at least 3 days after a premiere, because by the time we get to a premiere, I usually have the feeling that I have absolutely no idea what the piece is about. And with any luck, I'll get a lunch date with you and
I'll pretend.
Because sometimes it seems that you're not 100% sure either in the moment.
Well, and I also feel that kind of pressure, like say from, for the Öffentlichkeitsarbeit, for what do you call it, publicity or whatever it is, or public
marketing,
communication, marketing, whatever it is, like that kind of thing. It's really fehl am Platz, as they say. It's in the wrong place because they're demanding that we know. Do you know what I mean? There's this demand that we should know. And I just want to say, know what? As if knowing was the only goal of the process. And I'm like, and then what knowing? And does that mean I'm supposed to stop knowing about the piece now that I've said something because I've said it? And so that's why I'm really loath to do like interviews and stuff like that, because it insists on locking things in instead of saying, okay, it's premiere, now the process begins. Actually, the public process of the work. It's had a private process up to a certain point, and then you go, okay, now the public process begins. But I mean process, not it's not this, and we're going to ship this to Wien and London and whatever. It's just not at all a thing, in a sense. And because the people change, like I say, they mature, they have different life experiences, they go through processes themselves, all the performers, and often the performers have come to me and said, I need to change this, I understand this better, I'm older, wiser, better, weaker, injured, who knows, but all of the above, and they all count, and they're all you know, part of life. You can't sort of say that you have. We were talking about the human before. They were asking some question about what is that. I mean, it really is something as complex as each individual in the piece. It's not a thing where people, you know, lock into this space right here that's clearly defined. They, in a certain sense, have to keep the definition of what they're doing somewhat mobile, you know, or let's say, what's a word? Someone give me a word.
Mutable.
Mutable,
Yeah.
also good. M. Any more M words? Malleable.
Yeah, and giving that the ideas that underpin the piece are generated by this large team of people, some of whom are not necessarily there during the process. For example, Alvin Noe, is he here? He's had a voice in rehearsals at times, even when he wasn't there, because you think about him. And
or we have discussions at my kitchen table, you know what I mean? So discussions are happening in a number of different ways.
Yeah.
Also, you know, sometimes, for example, in the last piece, Brigitte and Fran have this thing where they have these counts, and then they have these things that I understand, and I see what something's going on, but I don't understand it, and I didn't ask them to explain, because I felt that if I understood, then I would try to see it that way, as opposed to me going, I see the logic of it, it's really interesting, how the fuck does that work? What is it? And they said to me, oh, if you knew, you wouldn't be as interested.
This is really the heart of it for me.
So yeah, but I'm the choreographer. You think I would want to know how the piece functions? Well, on the other hand, I thought, great, I get to be like everyone else in the audience, and I get to see it, as opposed to expect something to happen, like it should go like this, you know?
So you're the most inside of all of the collaborators, and yet you get to be an outside eye in a certain sense, which is supposedly one of the definitions of what a dramaturg is. But, yeah, I wonder how much I need to ask in order to be able to understand this piece, or to be able to convey information about this piece. Do I need to talk to everyone? How deeply do I need to dig? And even if they were to be able to tell me what's going on in every single section and subsection of the work, these danced dramaturgies that people make for themselves, would I really understand across this translation from their words into my brain?
I think what we do is a little too complex to be able to sum it up that way for you. But it depends on our backgrounds and things like that. And even for myself, if I knew what my little task was and I had an idea about it, it would be a pale description of
a little bit
something I'm trying to do, but not.
Yeah, but look what Jonathan talked about. Jonathan, we're talking about publishing an idea, and you sort of lay it to rest in a way. And I'm loath. What is loath in Deutsch? I don't know. I try. What?
Zufrieden.
Probably, yeah. I try not to ask too much.
That's a piece of bread.
Yeah. There they go. There you go. Because I think that the process of turning is a word and object, yeah, and so if you would say in some cases yes, das würde heißen verdinglichen, so reification. That would mean the making of that thing into a concept, even a feeling, a sense, sensation. It transforms it into a concept that is not, let's say, infinite in meaning. It's a small bandwidth of all possible meanings of everything. So what you do is you leave it open, but as soon as you ask for an explanation or demand that something be translated into language, I am perhaps superstitious. No, I'm not superstitious. I have a real feeling that it shuts down some kind of process that's still available to the person. Because not all, as you all know yourselves, not all dancing is verbalized. Yeah, it's senses of things. You get on stage, just not everything is language that way, you know. And so yeah.
It
So-
also shuts down the work, because as
Yeah.
soon as you tell somebody this means that, then they are more inclined to assume, okay, I've been told that this means that, so this should continue to mean that. And
Yeah.
so,
Yep.
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 Okay. Yep.
do we want to open it up for a few questions, or
Do you want to ask questions?
can we do a couple of?
Yeah, yeah.
I have a very good impression how you collect material, but I still cannot imagine how you make decisions. So you will choose, of course. And how do you do that?
Me neither.
That is my secret. You know what I mean?
What is good? What
Yeah,
is
no,
a
I
good
mean,
performance?
I'm not being facetious either, because I don't know how I make decisions. I trust myself, but I don't. I can go in and critique afterwards. I'd rather make a decision, and like I say, I don't have a book of the right decisions to make and go like, okay, boom, boom, like that. Do you know what I mean? I have no guide. Except a sense of things. So I work very intuitively. Yeah, I do my reading. Yeah, I read a lot. That's all I do is read, day and night. Yeah, I like to read. That's just me. So I do have things in the background, but they're not in the foreground. I know that I'm informed by them, and I trust myself. And if it doesn't work out, then I trust that feeling too, of, oh, this doesn't work out. And I don't go like, oh, I put so much work into this. Forget it. It's not important. So then I realize the next decision has to be a bigger decision as opposed to a bunch of small decisions. And then I have to go like, okay, I have to change like the last time, which is not the first time I've done this. I have to change the whole thing because I realize that perhaps those decisions I had made were under the influence of some other goal that I realize, oh, wrong goal. You know, it doesn't mean everything's lost. It just means that I then have to make, actually, in a certain sense, it simplifies in a way. If you have to make a whole evening in 2 hours, you can't make a lot of complicated little decisions. Yeah. So then the whole process sort of hierarchically collapses into something different. You know.
It's like,
The short production term works are the ones that seem not to change so
Yeah.
much.
Yeah.
I just meant his great skill, I think, is knowing immediately or almost immediately when it's a mistake. Like if you made a mistake, the sooner you deal with it, the better.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
chop it out and make something else and not try to save it.
Why prolong the pain?
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
It's like
But I don't often, okay, though,
Yeah.
for example, I've made something, I'm not happy with it. What I'll do is I'll leave it sometimes and look at what the tendency is in the performance, because I'm calling all the shows with Freya together. By the way, Freya and I actually have our veins with tubes connected during shows, and her timings are my timings or her timings. Because she's been there the whole process, a lot of the time, the timings of the shows are that way. Anyway, I'll let the show go on for, let's say, a couple performances or even a few runs, and after that, of not insisting on, I must change, people will see that I made bad choices. Sometimes you have to live with it, you know? But I'm willing to live with it and to be patient with the work and figure out, again, unconsciously, somehow just, you're chugging away, what the solution is. Like, yes, we can. It took us 2 years, and then
And 8 versions.
and 8 versions, right? And then, oh, okay, like that. So you have to also be patient with yourself. I don't care how experienced you are, is that you have to be able to go like, oh, okay, not so good, like that. And that doesn't mean you disrespect your audience or your craft or anything like that. It means you just don't have a solution, right? And what are you supposed to do? Beat yourself up because you don't have a solution right there. No, You have to wait till you understand what you're doing better. You know?
One
So
more
go out there.
One more question?
Yes.
Yes, I think it's very pleasant to listen to your talk because your team has a very joyful mood in a way. And my question is your work, your collaboration based on being symbiotic also and to agree on a lot of things? Because that somehow is the temper that comes through. So when, or maybe to formulate it in a different way, do you have moments where you disagree?
Oh yeah.
And when and why?
Yeah. Well, let's focus on the first part. I was in a show from Merce Cunningham, which we'd invited to Frankfurt. At one point, a bunch of guys are hopping around with their leg like this, yeah? And I laughed in the audience, and a lady turned around and she said, shh, like that. And I was like, ooh, sorry, like that. And I told Merce that, and he said, well, I looked at that, and I said, why not? Like that. So, you know.
I think you've done that too.
Yeah. What, he did?
Yeah, all of it.
So it's, and there's acknowledgement and agreement are two different things. Yeah? I can acknowledge what people's, whatever it is, their take or facet of what the direction might be we're going, but it doesn't mean that I agree that's the way we should go. Yeah? But it might inspire someone else in the room, not just me, because we're all working together. So it's not a question of I'm the only person who has to be affected by whatever someone's doing. I might think, no, but then finally that turns out to be what actually instigated most of the work that we end up using anyway. You know, so I cannot say, do I really know where it starts or where it will start or where it comes from? No, I don't. And it might come from precisely the thing I don't think is appropriate. Yeah. Sometimes, I'm trying to think, actual material? Yeah, I just think it's about the quality of work. And I mean the quality of the workplace. Yeah? Ideally, I am in a service position. I have to be careful not to overextend myself too much that way. But artists have agreed to work with me. And I pay them because they have agreed to work with me. Right? So I'm grateful to these people for having to committed themselves to me, because I really enjoy working with them. Yeah. So that said, yeah, it's like, yeah, I don't know.
We don't. I mean, I don't think we disagree so terribly anyway either.
We discuss. Yeah.
Yeah. There's nothing that goes terribly wrong in disagreement of. I mean, when it comes to material and
Yeah, the actual
working
processes and things like that. Nah.
People don't really seem to cling to ideas.
No, you
can't.
Me neither.
Yeah,
That's not the place.
I think it's more exciting to let it go and
Yeah, sure.
open up ground for something else to take its place.
I mean, speaking of dramaturgy, I first heard of the word more in context of the Schauspiel, and once they set a piece, they just do the same thing over and over again. The director flies out of town, and they keep doing it. I was shocked when I heard that.
I know, me too. I was like, what?
Really?
Really?
Like, how could they live like that? Not have, I don't know, like the director as an intelligent eye watching you, other than the audience, like someone who knows what you've been through and can relate to what you're doing. Like, why wouldn't you want that eye there?
And see the development of the artist and see watch their work. I mean, that's what you're setting up as a place for them to work intelligently. Yeah, I don't think I've missed more than 5 performances in 35 years, whatever. Yeah. So, and I mean, that's just a choice I make. And also, I'm lucky I could do that. Do you know what I mean? It's my situation allowed me to do that. I don't think everyone has the advantage of that. So that's pretty privileged. But when you say work, I assume you're working together, you know? So I would imagine the big subject for us is what is work, you know, in all its facets and capacities. And what could it mean? What does it entail? It doesn't mean that our work is problem-free. You know, apropos your question, it doesn't mean that we have a reibungslose, you know, perfectly lubricated path into the future. No, we have our ups and downs and whatever. We're all a bunch of human beings in the room, you know, with good days and bad. But that I think what has to stay is some sort of desire, no matter what, to reestablish, no matter what happens, respect for each other. Yeah, and how does one sustain that? Because we can all collapse into ourselves, you know. I am too human. And how do you keep getting out to the bigger picture, you know, like that? While still taking care of yourself, you know.